So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar about digitizing energy efficiency in Germany. My name is Benedikt Winter. I'm Senior Manager for Energy Efficiency at Germany Trade and Invest in Berlin. And today I will give you a market overview and I will also moderate the webinar. So let me introduce you to our great speakers. Today we have Henning Ellermann, who is Head of Energy Efficiency in Buildings at DENEF in Berlin. And DENEF is the German Business Initiative for Energy Efficiency. So welcome, Henning. And Henning will give us an overview of the current developments in the building sector, especially regulatory aspects, because there is a lot going on right now. And I also like to welcome Jürgen Ritzek, who's joining us from Brussels, and he's Business Director of the network EEIP, which stands for Energy Efficiency in Industrial Processes. So hello, Jürgen, and he will present us, of course, the industrial sector, and he will highlight some challenges and opportunities. So thank you for being with us. And before we start, I'd like to give you some facts regarding the organization. So you have the possibility to ask questions to the speakers during the webinar. So we'll have a short Q&A session after each presentation. So feel free to send us questions. It's in the chat box on the right of your screen. And the webinar is recorded. You'll receive a link to the recording afterwards, as well as to the presentations. And like I said, I will give you an overview of the market for energy efficiency in Germany and the two sectors that we're interested in today, buildings and industry. But first, I need to tell you a few words about my organizations. It's Germany Trade and Invest, the economic development agency of the Federal Republic of Germany. And our role is to support international companies that want to establish a business presence in Germany. So for instance, the creation of a subsidiary here. And for those companies, we offer publications and services, for instance, about tax and legal aspects. We also can support you with financing issues or site selection, and all of this is free of charge. And we also provide market analysis, and that's what I want to do with you today. So let's start with the market overview. And as you know, Germany is one of the worldwide leaders for energy efficiency. And even if many efforts have been made in the past, there is still a huge potential. And that's what I illustrated on this slide. You see here extract of a study called Greentech Atlas. And this study estimated the size of the German energy efficiency market for 2016. It amounted at around 80 billion euros, and you also see the growth potential. Growth rate would be 9.1% per year until 2025. And the segments considered here are cross-sector components, production processes, that's for the industrial part, and appliances and energy efficient buildings, of course, for the building part. And interesting for you is that this study also estimated the impact of digitization. And they found out that digitization could add an extra 7 billion euros to the market size of about 180 billion euros in 2025. So that's the size of the market that we want to better understand today. Now I'd like to focus on the building sector. That's the first sector that we want to understand better. And we have many participants from all over the world. So I wanted to start with a map of Germany with some key figures about the building sector. So you see here on the map the density of population around the country. We are a decentralized country with several big cities like Berlin, Hamburg, Munich, but you also see other regions that are very dense with inhabitants. We have 83 million inhabitants in Germany, so of course we have many buildings. We have 19 million residential buildings, and on top of that, 2.7 million non-residential buildings. So if you have solutions for offices, for instance, that could be interesting for you. And currently we have quite a low level of digitization in the building sector, but digitization will definitely be one of the solutions for Germany to reach its climate goals in the building sector. I wanted to give you an example for one segment. Here I represented the current and the forecast development of turnover in the smart home sector, especially for the product energy management systems. And you see that the turnover is expected to grow from 510 million euros in 2019 to 840 million in 2023. And if you consider the penetration rate for this product, it's quite low currently at around 10% in 2019, but is expected to reach 23% until 2023. One other aspect that I wanted to address is policy, because it's also one of the main drivers for the implementation of digitization in the building sector. So here is an overview of the different policies that affect energy efficiency in buildings. And in general, our policy instruments are rather based on information and incentives than on regulations. So I'd like to focus on several incentive programs that support the installation of digital devices in buildings. So there's, for instance, the subsidy programs of the German Development Bank, KfW, for energy efficient construction and renovations. These programs are very famous and well established on the market. And they also enable to finance smart home and smart meter solutions. Another program is the energy saving meter that is offered by BAFA. It's the Federal Office of Economics and Export Control. And this program supports companies developing digital measurement systems for different fluids like electricity or gas, for instance. And finally, digital systems are also part of the climate action plan that has just been decided in Germany. And at that point, I'd like to pass on to our expert, Henning. I don't have time to address all the aspects that are on this slide, but I guess Henning will give us more insights right away. And of course, you can get in touch with us for more information afterwards. So Henning, I will give you the word.
Thank you very much, Benedict. I hope you can all see my screen. Good morning. My name is Henning Ellermann. I am with DENEF, the German Business Initiative for Energy Efficiency. Maybe one or two words about our organization. We are a business association for the energy efficiency field, comprising about 180 member companies at the moment. We are a lobbying organization for better framework conditions for the energy efficiency market, and also a network of front-runner companies. Now, to get into the details of today's topic, let me start with a question. Why does the German building sector actually need a digital revolution? And in my opinion, it is because so far we have very ambitious goals of almost carbon neutrality by 2050, but we are moving at a very slow pace in the building sector, and in all sectors, in fact, but especially also in the building sector, towards this goal. And we will not reach it with the current pace that we are adopting. So what we need is nothing short of a revolution in how we build, how we operate buildings, and how we renovate buildings. And we believe that digital solutions will play a major role in this, in kind of jump-starting the renovation rocket and getting a lot more energy savings out of the building stock. How will that happen? Well, on the one hand, we need digital solutions in the buildings themselves to make them future-proof, and that means, as Benedict already hinted at, home and building energy management systems to operate the buildings more efficiently. That will mean technologies to help integrate on-site renewables, such as PV systems and storage. It also means making buildings capable of adjusting demand to the more and more renewables in the grid, so making them more flexible, and also integrating, for example, future rising e-mobility aspects. So the buildings will play a different role in the energy system, and energy efficiency and flexibility will have to play together, and for that we need digital solutions much more than we have in the past. Secondly, though, we do need digital solutions because the building real estate and construction sectors are some of the most woefully under-digitized sectors in the German economy. So there is a lot of kind of money left on the sidewalks, a lot of high transaction cost processes that can use digital disruption. So we need digital solutions as enablers for lower transaction costs, better, more customer-focused business models, and to make sure that we don't just, when we upgrade and retrofit buildings, that we don't just install equipment, but that we make sure that we get the real performance afterwards. That means a lot more measurement and verification and new business models around that. And for that, we need digital solutions as well to actually make sure that we reach our ambitious climate goals. Speaking of climate goals, as Benedikt already mentioned, we have seen some major policy initiatives over the last few months in Germany in order to get us to reach our 2030 targets after already missing our 2020 targets quite clearly. The government has put forth a number of legislative proposals. Some of them have already passed the legislative process. Some of them are still under negotiation with the German states, for example. But the core of this new legislation is the climate protection law at the national level, which has sector-specific targets, including a clear emissions reduction target for 2030 of 70 million tons of CO2 that are still left to be emitted by 2030. And that means, compared to the status quo, that we need to reduce our carbon emissions in the building sector alone by 40% compared to now until 2030. So that's barely 10 years to reach this very ambitious goal to reduce carbon emissions by almost half. How is this supposed to be done? By means of incentives and more incentive programs than we have had in the past, by means of a CO2 price on fossil fuels, meaning oil and gas, that will start quite low, but rise over the next few years, and by some limited regulation now, at least from now until 2023. This is complemented and driven by EU-level legislation. For example, a governance regulation that means that we have annual reduction targets for each country, and if countries don't manage to reduce CO2 emissions by a certain amount in the sectors that are not covered by the European emissions trading scheme, that means that they have to actually buy certificates from other countries at possibly a very high cost, and this will be on an annual basis. So every year now, the German climate protection law stipulates that all ministries need to monitor whether they are reducing CO2 in their responsible sectors, and if they don't, they need to immediately come up with a direct action program to get us back on track. So there is a built-in mechanism to make sure that if we miss targets with the measures that we have decided on now, we have to immediately come up with additional measures or tougher regulation, for example, in order to meet those targets. We also have direct European legislation, such as the Efficiency Directive, Buildings Directive, or reporting requirements for the financial sector and large publicly traded companies that are also driving legislation in Germany to get more efficiency out of the building sector. This is just a very, very rough draft. If you have questions about that, please let me know. What do we have very specifically in the digital field that's coming up or already in place? We have mandatory energy audits for larger companies of more than 250 employees or 50 million euro turnover annually. We have a smart meter rollout ongoing, and we will very soon get an implementation of a European directive for retrofitting EV charging equipment in commercial buildings. The European directives are also requiring us to come up with a plan to retrofit large commercial buildings with energy monitoring and possibly even automation, but that is still not clear how we're going to implement that, but that is definitely on the horizon for the German market in terms of what needs to be implemented in buildings now or soon. Benedikt already mentioned that we will increase funding for the current subsidy schemes that are available. There will be higher grants for all kinds of energy efficiency retrofits in buildings, including home energy management and building energy management systems. And just to give you an idea, it will be co-funding of at least 20% for almost all measures, and the additional funding from now until 2023, on top of what's already there, is an additional about 5 billion euros. So if you take a 20% funding rate, that means it stimulates investments of about 25 billion euros over the next 4 years. So that's not bad for a program like that. I will leave some of the other points out here just to not clutter the presentation, but feel free to ask about any of these points. Last but not least, to dive a little deeper into some of the sectors. We have, as Benedikt mentioned, a quite low penetration rate for home energy management systems in Germany at the moment. There is a smart home market that is growing and is driven largely by comfort issues as well as energy savings and increasingly also transparency from the one hand, so from the energy consumption point of view, and on the other hand, it is also driven by the fact that increasingly people are installing PV on their roofs, not to feed it into the grid, but to use it on site in their buildings for their household use. So increasingly also with batteries on site. So this topic is something that is driving digitization in the residential sphere very much. In commercial buildings, Germany has traditionally been strong on building automation and controls, but systematic energy management systems and real sub-metering down to a individual component or installation level is definitely not standard yet, but increasingly on the radar of property companies and also corporate real estate management, because they do see that they have increasing climate risks and possibly also regulation risks. And we get many requests right now from companies that are asking, okay, what is coming? What do I need to do in order to make sure that I am not exposed to any risks in the next few years? Do I need to actually find out how my buildings are performing? Because many property companies even today don't have a good overview of the energy performance of their buildings. So there's little transparency in the market at the moment, almost no benchmarking in commercial buildings. The data on residential buildings is pretty good, but commercial buildings is almost a black box. So there is a lot to be done here in the digital field, not just in terms of energy performance, but as I mentioned, the whole sector is under digitized. So there is a whole hype right now about prop tech companies that are digitizing a lot of the processes in the building sector. And feel free to enter this market. It's early days, and there is tons of opportunities in all along the value chain of construction and real estate that is waiting to be disrupted, including building information management, including any kind of digital planning tools with artificial intelligence for optimizing energy, or for digitizing energy audits, analyzing large portfolios, anything like that. Also, industrialized retrofits that are industrializing and digitizing part of the value chain of renovation are gaining ground now, with first contracts being signed by large housing companies to have buildings renovated. This is the background of this, is that people want better quality, they want guarantees, they want maybe lower costs, and they want to save on manpower, because Germany largely is facing a manpower shortage for the renovation topic. So anything that gets higher productivity out of one craftsperson is highly appreciated. And last but not least, ESCO models anything that delivers guaranteed savings and requires good analysis is going to be on the up over the next few years. And that's just a brief snapshot of what's going on right now. And I turn over back to Benedikt. Feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Henning. I will leave your contact data for a while, and in that time, I will be able to ask you some questions that arrived over the chat during your presentation. So the first question, if you're ready to go,
Sure.
is there a discussion about rebound effects in Germany already?
There is a discussion about rebound effects, although we would say that often it's slightly a slightly misguided discussion, because the fact that in some sectors energy consumption is rising is not a result of higher energy efficiency, but it's a result of higher income levels and kind of shifts in customer and consumer attitudes and so on. So it's not strictly speaking rebound. Energy efficiency has been able to offset a lot of the, for example, growth of living area per person that we are seeing in Germany. So people are on average now using more space to live than they did a few decades before, and energy efficiency has been offsetting that increase in living area. But it hasn't been able to reduce overall consumption as much as it would have if people were still living in smaller apartments. In terms of digitization, energy efficiency is a huge topic because digital solutions, especially data centers, are one of the sectors where energy consumption is definitely increasing. So the government has it on its radar to reduce energy consumption and increase energy productivity of data centers by, for example, addressing the topic of cooling and waste heat, where we have most of the energy consumption in the ICT sector. But overall, ICT for energy efficiency, meaning the kind of building energy management and so on, definitely needs a lot less energy than it saves. But of course, as more sectors in general digitize, the demand for data centers and so on increases. So there's a huge potential market for energy efficient solutions to get these centers run and cooled.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I'm looking at the time. I see that I guess we would continue with the next part about industry. So thank you, Henning. And if we have more questions at the end, we could try to take them. But for now, I will continue with an overview like I did for the building sector. I will give you an overview of the industrial sector. So you probably know that Germany is one of the largest industrial countries in the world. And I just wanted to show you a bit of geography about our industry. So here I represented the number of production sites in manufacturing industry by federal states. And you see that we have the strongest industrial regions located in the west and in the south of Germany. And I recall here that with Germany Trade and Invest, we can support you finding the right location for your business. So it might be a criterion that you want to consider. And otherwise, the industry has been investing a lot in energy efficiency in the last years. We consume a lot of energy. So last year, or in 2017, about 700 million euros were invested for energy efficiency measures. And here we're talking mainly about still analog or traditional energy efficiency measures like heat recovery systems or heat pumps or CHP, but it's clear that digitization will also play a major role to lever the remaining energy savings in the industry. So again, I'd like to mention the policies that affect digitization in the industrial sector. Again, it's mainly based on incentives. And currently there are two incentive programs that could be interesting for you. The first one is the Energy Efficiency in Business program, which offers either credits via the development bank KfW or direct grants. And there is a module 3 of this program, which focuses on digital solutions. It supports the implementation of measurement and control technologies, as well as energy management softwares. And those measures can be funded up to 40% of the eligible investment costs. And BAFA, the provider of this subsidy program, publishes a list of energy management softwares that are eligible for subsidy, for instance. There is also a competitive support scheme that supports the most efficient projects in terms of CO2 savings. And under this scheme, it is possible to get subsidies for the installation of sensors and measurement and control technologies again. So if you have questions about the instruments, please get in touch afterwards, because now I'd like to pass on to Jürgen Ritzek from EEIP, and he will tell us more about technological developments, but also about opportunities and challenges. So Jürgen, if you're ready to go. Jürgen?
So, hello everybody. Good morning. Thanks,
Good morning.
Benedict. I hope you can see the screen now.
Not yet.
Not yet?
No. No, we don't see your screen right now. Yes, there you
Okay.
go.
Okay, perfect. So, so once again, good morning. As Benedict said, I will now try basically to give you a brief overview about the energy efficiency market concerning the German industry, and specifically about the digitization side of it. It's obviously not about the details. If you have any detailed questions, I'm happy to take them up one-to-one after this webinar. But I would like to give you an overview about the structure of the market, and obviously the opportunities for foreign companies considering entering this market in Germany. Just briefly, a few words about ourselves. Benedict said already, EIP. EIP stands for Energy Efficiency in Industrial Processes. That's the name. Effectively, we are a global business-to-business information platform, and we focus on the business case of energy efficiency, but also the wider energy transition. EIP was founded in 2011. It is a neutral, not-for-profit platform, and today we see more than 140,000 experts from business, technology, finance, policy using EIP services. So let's give it a start. How does energy efficiency looks like from an industry perspective? It's not necessarily only a German perspective, but basically industry views energy efficiency from two angles. It is either the entire production process. That would mean from your side, you would have some extra expertise in specific sectors. For example, you're a specialist for chemical industries. Or they look at a specific technology or specific system. That could mean, for example, you are an expert on a compressed air solution. Now, with this being the industry perspective, it still looks like very physical, very technical. So question is, okay, where is the digital part of it? And you can see it like a data layer, a layer which is basically covering everything from how to physically get the data gathering part, how to analyze the data or use the data, for example, in simulations, and at the very end, the very important part, how to transfer that analytical results into action. So how to basically improve the energy performance. And obviously, the interesting part is that this data layer is crucial for any solution. So either on the sector side or sector perspective, or on a certain technology side. And how does it now link to the market potential? Well, as said, at the very end, you have to combine the physical layer, for example, the compressor, with the data layer. So, which means you're not selling compressor anymore, but you might want to sell compressed air as a service. So then you have a very extensive data layer on it. If we take that, it was already said that we arrive at, well, as of today, at a market volume of around 80 billion euro. And it is estimated that this volume will grow to 180 billion in 2025. And if you see that here on the right side of the chart, that is even more than estimated for the entire environmentally friendly power generation, storage, and distribution sector. What you can also see on this chart here on the left side is something which is has a headline called Industry 4.0. And this also is a nice, basically, presentation showing that combination of the two layers. So you see the physical layer and the digital layer. And this Industry 4.0 picture is a little bit broader than just on the industrial process side. It also covers the supply chain part of it. But interestingly, this is very relevant to have in mind when you think about wording, because Industry 4.0 is something which is very known in industry. And more important, even energy efficiency is one of the most important use cases in that Industry 4.0 picture. And now there is some ice on the cake. That was mentioned already by Benedict. There is a market potential of around 7 billion extra, you might say. And that is coming from new business models coming out of the digitization. And that is, you can see here, covering a number of areas, probably a few more, like new processes, smart robots, product communication, or augmented reality. Which means, okay, in a new process, the process can be more energy efficient. Smart robots also allow basically different production processes, which has an impact on the energy used. Product communication, that refers basically to the interaction between products, people, and processes in a factory. And that might mean at the very end also to optimize processes, and that means to reduce energy. And the augmented reality is also something which is already used in some processes, mainly for maintenance things, but it can also be used basically in solutions to save energy. And these developments, that is at least the prediction of a study made by Roland Berger for a German ministry, is estimated to deliver another 7 billion euro of market potential in 2025. So briefly summarizing, this is basically a kind of 3 layers. Yeah, so you have the physical production, you have the data layer, and you have then this ice on the cake, the extra new business model layer. Obviously, it's more a mental structure because these layers do not exist usually alone in the market. So any physical layer has a data layer on top of it. But if you consider that new business model ice on the cake on top, you arrive at a market potential of nearly 190 billion in 2025. Well, this looks like good news, and these are good news, but as always, there are some drivers and challenges behind. So what can that be? There are very many on individual case level, obviously. But here I can only highlight a few broader ones. So a driver is, and I think Benedict mentioned it also at the beginning, in principle, the German industry is very interested to invest in energy efficiency. Due to legislative reasons, it can be reasons basically to hedge against price volatility, CSR reasons. So that is basically a good starting point. But on the other side, we're talking about industry, and industry is business driven, meaning business case driven. And that means also, usually they expect a payback of energy investment of less than 2 years. That might be different for some solutions, but in principle, this is a kind of line you should have in mind. Secondly, I mentioned beforehand Industry 4.0 being very much known in the market. This is a nice driver for energy efficiency because energy efficiency, as said, is a key use case in that scenario. On the other side, as it is a broader scenario, that means there's also a lot more knowledge needed to become an active player in that Industry 4.0 setup. And then at the last one, what I mentioned as the ice of the cake, well, yes, many in industry have big fears that they fall behind in that new business model development, that they're outpaced by competitors. So they will be interested in going into it. On the other side, it is still in its infancy. So that means it's it's a high risk market. And in addition, this kind of markets sometimes can be categorized as a winner gets it all. So from the competitive side, that might be a challenge as well. So question is, when you think, well, are we ready? What should you do, or where could you go from here? The first point is clear. When you do a first draft plan, you should think about, okay, do we handle the basics? On the data side, you should have in mind that Germany is a rather sensitive country when it comes to data. And secondly, obviously, you should have clearly defined where you can add value in that market. We talk about technology, about processes. So you have to see where you sit in that, where your digital solution can add value in that market. And then, if you would like to go a step further, what we believe is it is very, very important to start engaging with key actors in the market at the beginning. And two of them are present here on the webinar, Benedikt from German Trade and Invest and Henning from DENIF. Others are, for example, the platform Industry 4.0. But it could also be interesting to engage with German research institutes, and there are around 180 at the moment who are dealing with the digital part in industry. And this engagement basically delivers you a few very important aspects basically at the beginning of a market entry. Main point is it delivers you or give you access to partners, but also knowledge about funding and legislation, and the engagement with research institutes give you also a feeling about the directions the market will take in the future. So if that is about the basics, the structure and the drivers and challenges, I just would like to close with a very short outlook. It's going a little bit beyond industry, or you could call it beyond industry. The International Energy Agency sees markets merging, and that means we are moving beyond the end use efficiency market, and end use basically can understand from being industry to an system energy efficiency, which means you are also integrating the industry with the wider energy system. That's attractive because it would give you access to another 130 billion euro market potential. But the big challenge here, and nobody really has an answer right now, I think, is how to crack the business case. So, and that's everything from my side. If there's any question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jürgen. We have several questions, and I think we have a little time to answer them. So the first one would be, what is the potential exactly for energy efficiency in industry? Or in other words, what savings expectations would a cement or steel manufacturer have, for instance?
Yeah, so that's a good question. What's the potential? It's very clear that it's very different by sector and companies. When you look for indicators, well, there is, for example, there's a program by the European Commission, which is about developing factories of the future. And in that program, they have outlined that they expect industry factories to deliver solutions which can reduce energy consumption at least by 25%. That could be an indication.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. And we have another question maybe for the two of you. I think it's quite interesting. How would you see the societal expectation to act on climate change, influencing investment in energy efficiency initiatives, or are they more influenced by economic payback incentives for companies? I guess it would be for the two sectors. Do you have an opinion? Is it more driven by societal expectations or by economic payback? Do you have an opinion, maybe Henning or Jürgen?
Well, I can say a few words about industry. I think, yeah, the typical answer is depends. In industry, it's very much a business case. That's correct. There can be scenarios where the public opinion, the CSR side of it, might be very strong. If you think about CSR, you often also see about financing and reporting. So the financial sector engagement, which you can then say is more a business topic again. As finance sector is also more and more forced basically to drive out non-environmental friendly investments. that is another driver. But societal, on industry, less, I would say.
Okay, I think we won't get Henning's answer because we lost him, I think, with the connection. But then I will just come to an end with this webinar. I'd like to thank you, Jürgen, at that time. And I think our participants have gained a good understanding of the status quo of digitization of energy efficiency in Germany. And of course, we would be happy to stay in touch with you afterwards. And so here is my contact data on the screen. So feel free to contact me if you consider an expansion to Germany, of course. And if you need more detailed information, you can also visit our website. Here I've put some links. So for instance, we have a publication about construction and green building in Germany. And you can also subscribe to our energy efficiency newsletter because as you heard, there are many political regulatory changes right now. So we would be happy to keep you updated, of course. And also feel free to get in touch with our speakers. They have also provided their contact data. So we're now coming to an end. It was a pleasure for myself to present the webinar. And of course, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your expansion plans to Germany. So thank you again to all the participants and to our speakers, Henning and Jürgen. And now I wish you a very nice day. Goodbye. Bye, Jürgen.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.